Welcome to the latest episode of Behind the Fox. Today we're sitting here with Mollie Peskind, a family law attorney in St. Charles, Illinois, although living in Batavia. I want to welcome everyone here today. Welcome, Mollie.
Thanks for having me.
All right, a little background on Mollie. In addition to being a wife, mother, animal rights advocate, and amazing community activist, Mollie is one of the best matrimonial law attorneys in the state, not only in Kane County. Mollie is a third-generation lawyer at Peskind Law Firm. I think her law firm started sometime around the time of the horse and buggy, but she still works with her father. It's a family affair, and they are the go-to family law firm in our county. Mollie, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Well, take a step back. Tell us a little bit of what it's like working with your family.
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Also, thank you. That was nicer than I probably deserved. Working with my family, for me, it has been an amazing experience because I am one of those people that if I have a question or something on my mind, it needs to be addressed immediately, which probably will not surprise you guys at all. And I have the ability to call up my boss at 9 p.m. any day of the week and demand that he talk to me about it so that I can sleep better at night. And I think that is a luxury that not everyone obviously has. But, the other sort of fun thing about working with family is that at our office, because it's my dad and I, but then obviously it's my brother who's an attorney there, and my sister works there. And everyone else has sort of met that family dynamic. So all of our other employees really, it does feel like a family there, and all of us sort of, treat each other like we are siblings, which I think is good because it gives us the opportunity to be more frank with each other, right? And there's never any hard feelings. But it's sort of funny because you'll hear my sister and I bickering in the back, and if you didn't know that we were siblings, it probably would be frightening to another staff member.
So Katie and I, obviously, we work together, and it's a wonderful thing to be, in business with a family member, in business with your spouse. How is it different when you're going into business with your father, and your father is this luminary in not only the legal space but the family law space? Is it intimidating? Is it exciting? How does that work?
Probably both, I guess. I've never really thought about it that way, but like being in court with him, that's intimidating, right? When he's just watching me because he's been doing this so long. And yeah, I guess it does sort of make me nervous, but it's exciting, and a compliment from him obviously means a lot, and we're always seeking it. But the difference between like being with your spouse, that's so interesting. My husband, he was around when I was studying for the bar. And so he was like listening to all of these podcasts, remember? Or not podcasts. What are they?
The Barbary tapes,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
PMBR tapes,
Exactly.
all that jazz.
And he would like question me on these things, and he was usually right because his brain just works like that. He grasps it right away. And I was like, I could never work with you. And I still probably agree with that. But with my dad, it's a little bit, I don't know. It's like so good. There's really no downside. We have a really good dynamic, including with my brother, who's the lawyer there. And yeah, I don't know.
We find that it is so helpful to have a unified purpose. Josh and I working together, being married, we're on the same side,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it helps us, and I see it in your firm as well, that you're working together, you're rowing together, and it's about helping your clients. And as you do that, you're growing your business, you're growing your world. Sorry,
Well, you're growing your family, right? So it's one thing to have a law firm or a business where you have partners and you're all working toward the same goal. But it's quite another thing when your partners are your family and you're invested from a personal standpoint. Like,
For sure.
we're talking about your dad, Stephen Peskind, and your
Right.
brother, John Peskind, and your
Mm-hmm.
sister, of course. But I mean, your dad wants you to succeed. Your dad
Yeah.
wants you to be the next, quote unquote, Stephen Peskind.
Mm-hmm.
Probably wants the same for your brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then on your end, when the day gets a little rough, your dad provides free childcare at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah.
like everyone's personally invested as well as, professionally invested. And that's what Katie and I see with our dynamic. And I think that's what you're explaining too.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys do it at home though, with not talking about work literally all the time.
Oh, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's nice for me is not working with my husband, right? I do get to go home and work is not the only thing that we talk about it a lot, but it is not the only thing that we talk about. But like when I'm with my parents, it is so hard for me not to be talking about it because this is our world. So I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, I think we do find that we end up talking about our cases so much because we're so invested in our clients.
Yeah.
I mean, we care. I mean, I know you do too. We genuinely care about what happens in these people's lives, not just at the end of their case, but on the day to day, you know? And so whether it's, how can we help this person with their property damage, or how can we make sure they can afford their health care, or how, everything in between, right? Or they just lost their job and that's a new dynamic in the case. You're constantly talking to one another like, well, how do you think I should handle this? What should we do for them? How can we help them? How can we steer them? What resources can we guide them to? Those different types of things. And I'm sure you're doing that too.
Yep.
And so, of course, when you're in a room with your father and your mother, who's also been involved in the business for so long, they have all this knowledge and experience, right? And even, we've been, Katie and I have been attorneys for 21 years. I think you're 15 or 16.
I am. Oh my gosh, I probably should have come in thinking about this. What am I? 12?
12. Okay.
But it feels like 40.
Feels like forever.
It does. And so,
but on the other hand, I also feel like a newborn still. So,
well, and
I don't know.
I think that happens probably in your situation, maybe because you are with your father and your father is this just wealth of experience, right?
Yeah.
But someone once told me, and I think it applies to the law, but I think it applies to a lot of different professions. You'll know what to do in a couple years. You won't feel comfortable in a situation until about 5 years out of practice, 5 years of practice. But even then, whether it's 12 years, 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, there's going to be a situation that you encounter that you haven't encountered before.
Yeah, 100%.
A set of circumstances that come up that you're like, okay, I've dealt with these individually before, but when they're together, is this the right course?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, I think for Katie and I, we get to bounce those concepts off one another. But for you, you've got this amazing resource, you're an amazing resource, but an amazing resource. So that's kind of cool. What's it like working with your brother?
So good. I mean, he is one of the smartest people, and I feel like I'm probably his harshest critic. So this says a lot. He is one of the smartest people that I know. He is also one of the best litigators that I have ever seen. He is so quick. He somehow has this ability to like retain the most random information. You need a case cite, he's going to have it for you off the top of his head. But it's really, really nice to be able to bounce ideas off of him too with no fear of any judgment, right? Like there are no dumb questions. He might make fun of me maybe if he thinks one is dumb, but I'm not worried about it. I don't really care what he thinks about, I don't know, my questions. Just delete all of that. But the bottom line is there's no judgment. It's very easy to talk to him. And I am really glad that he ended up staying in family law because he actually left the family firm for a second and we missed him. Like I missed having that person to bounce ideas off of.
And he's younger than you, right?
He is. Mm-hmm.
So how much younger?
He is a little less than 2 years.
Okay.
So we're close. We're super close.
So it wasn't like you were the big sister taking care of him all of his life. You guys kind of grew up together almost, right?
Yeah, although I'm bossy. I still boss him around. And I did when we were growing up.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I know. Yep. He handles it great. Yeah.
So, kind of talking about family law, what is it that someone can expect who's maybe starting to face an issue where they might need to come and see you? What does that look like?
As far as like setting up a consultation.
Well, I think it could be setting up a consultation or like just even kind of talking about the cases that you handle, your areas that that someone would want to be able to reach out to you with a situation that they have.
So we practice exclusively family law. So any divorce issue, obviously custody issues, post decree issues, so issues that arise after a divorce or another judgment, any issues related to child support or maintenance, that kind of thing. And one of my personal passion projects is adoptions. I really like doing step-parent adoptions, whether by consent or not. I just wrote an article for the ISBA, which essentially was a plea to the legislature to modify our Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act to provide for a provision where you can terminate the rights of one parent. Obviously, the burden would be extraordinarily high, but you could terminate the rights of one parent without needing a subsequent adopter for the child. And the reason that that has become important for me is because I've seen so many cases where it is ripe for a termination. Let's say one parent just hasn't been around for the last 10 or 15 years. But the only way in Illinois to terminate that parent's rights is either for your child to essentially become a ward of the state and go through the DCFS process, and they obviously can terminate the rights of a parent, which is not ideal in most circumstances. Or alternatively, you need a subsequent adopter. And not everybody has that, right? If you're not remarried or not in a serious relationship or don't have a close family friend or family member who is able to do it, there is no avenue for a termination. So anyway, long story short, we do a lot of step-parent adoptions where we are terminating the rights of a biological parent who generally, in most cases, it's because they just haven't been around for an extended period of time and have not supported the child. And those are really fulfilling cases for me. I probably my favorite kind of case to handle.
So you've been doing family law for 12 years. Of course, your firm's been around forever. Is there a prototypical or most common reason a family ends up in a divorce situation?
Oh, such a good question. And people ask me all the time. And I don't think I have a good answer to it. I think that the answer really is no. I would say a lot of times I'm talking to people who say they just have no idea what happened, which I assume means that, whether it is that they fell out of love or just didn't put in the efforts necessary to, keep the relationship strong or whatever it is, someone's needs were not met. I think that usually it is not a dramatic reason, right? I think most people assume that oftentimes it would be because of an infidelity, whether that is having an affair with someone or like a financial infidelity. And honestly, I would say that is probably a more rare reason that I see.
So when someone is thinking about a divorce, what would you suggest that they do to prepare themselves, but also what are some of the things that they should know?
The most important thing is to reach out to an attorney, maybe even before you know whether you need to proceed with a divorce. I think that people oftentimes think that this process is a lot worse than it really is. I think that people are assuming that they are not going to be able to survive a divorce, whether it is for financial reasons or because of the kids. And so what they'll do is they will delay talking to someone and really understanding the process for so long, sometimes years. And the reality is, when you talk to a lawyer who's presumably going to explain what this process is likely to look like, in most cases, it is less scary than what people are assuming that it's going to be. So always just talk to a lawyer, just get an idea about what the process looks like, and that is going to help make some decisions about what the timeline is going forward.
So you mentioned the financial side of this. I think I get a lot of questions, and we're in personal injury law, but I get a lot of questions from people, essentially surrounding the idea that, a simple divorce just costs too much. We're in agreement about everything. But we can't afford to go through the divorce process. I don't know how rare it is, and maybe you can comment on that. But if a husband and wife have come to the point where they're like, we're done. We might have a couple kids. We want to share custody. We don't have a whole lot to split up. We figured it out. How expensive is that process for that couple then to go through and get the divorce?
So that's a good question. And it is sort of hard to answer because I think a lot of times in my experience, I see people who are coming to me saying that exact thing, but there's actually a lot of holes to the settlement that they have discussed, right? Or I think a lot of times too, it's like really wishful thinking about how amicable this is going to be. And so what we're doing is we're leaving the really hard issues off the table, but they need to be addressed, right? So a truly, truly amicable divorce, I mean, I guess this is really subjective, but it can be done whether alone or through an attorney in under a few $1,000s, right?
But there's always the unknowns, right? So you mentioned those things that people don't think about, the things that aren't being negotiated, aren't being discussed. I mean, they might think that they've got the house figured out. They might think they've got custody figured out. What are the things you see when people are coming to you in that divorce situation that they really haven't anticipated, that catch them off guard, that end up in a fight?
I mean, even the house. So a lot of times people will say, well, I'm just going to stay in the house until the kids graduate, right? That sounds sort of dreamy. We're taking care of it. Kids get to stay in the house for a while. They're not going to be displaced before they go to college, whatever. But what people aren't thinking about are the potential consequences of that kind of agreement too, right? Like, what about a catastrophic event? Who is paying for that post-divorce, right? There are issues that come up that just nobody could foresee. And so I think a lot of times what people are doing is they're sort of like putting Band-Aids on these issues that they have. And they're not, to be fair, how could they anticipate these issues, right? Because they don't do this every day.
So I find in personal injury, the context matters, right? The why matters. And that comes from our experience and also is why I think we're called counselors, right? You need to counsel your client to make the best decisions possible. Because like you said, something sounds dreamy in the abstract, but here are the challenges if you do this, or here's the why for why I would recommend that we do something else. And I think that's where hiring an attorney or having the conversation without even having to hire you, right? You have a consultation process. And you can spot issues. You can point it out to them. So how does the consultation process work for you?
That is a good point. And also, that's sort of what I was going to get at to Josh, to your question, is like that there are certain cases where, in my opinion, and I know that sometimes people don't trust when a lawyer says you need a lawyer, right? But there are certain cases where you're just not going to be able to spot the issues. And having a lawyer is so, so important. But there are also cases, and I tell people this in the consult, if you don't need a lawyer, you don't need us. I'm very transparent about that, right? If we don't have any property or any retirement or any kids and we make the same amount of money, right? Maybe you are just doing that yourself. We have resources, at least in Kane County, where lawyers help walk people through the process. But there really are a lot that require the help of an attorney, in my opinion, right? To avoid issues down the line. Consultations. So I think our consult is different than some lawyers just based on what people have told me, because I really get into the facts of the case. I already start talking strategy. I like to give people an expectation for what the process will look like, because I think it helps people sleep better at night, right? The unknown is terrifying. And I think that this is one of the only times in someone's life where they have no idea what their life looks like in 6 months, right? Maybe 3 months, maybe 2 weeks. And I'm sure that it is just innate to human beings that we want some control over what our future looks like. And a divorce process takes that all away, right? But I like to walk people through what they can expect and what I would anticipate would be a likely outcome, because I think that just giving someone more of an expectation of what their life is going to look like is really a blessing to them. They can sleep at night, right?
Yeah, it's a service that you're offering, and it's a really important service.
Well, Katie talks about counseling. And in our practice, Katie works a lot with our new clients to work them through the pre-litigation side of an injury case. And then I get the case once it goes to lawsuit, right? And so what you're describing in your consultation, I view as education.
Yeah.
When I get the new client, either because they come directly from me in the pre-suit side, which sometimes that happens, or Katie transfers them over to me, they don't really know yet what to expect from the lawsuit. They know what to expect from the pre-litigation claims perspective.
Sure.
But they don't understand what the lawsuit's going to entail, how long the lawsuit's going to take, at least not in great detail. So I spend an hour with them explaining the process, explaining to them how a complaint gets filed, how summons gets served, what discovery looks like, what a deposition will look like, what this looks like, how long it's going to take to get to trial, the likelihood that we're going to get to trial, all these different types of things. In our life cycle of a case, there's particular times when settlement is more likely than others. And so you explain those points in time. And I think that's what you're describing when you're explaining to them in that consultation role, which I think is incredibly important, right?
Yeah.
Now, going back to those issues you said that kind of blow up those simple divorces, I want to touch on a couple of those because I think our people, and by the way, Mollie, that's what we call the viewers and the listeners. They're our people. They can be your people too. How about that?
Great.
Wonderful.
Love it.
But let's take that house situation for one. The issue seems simple. Mom and kids need to live in the house until kids are 18, but mom and dad are going to stay on the mortgage. What's the problem with that?
First of all, who is paying for it? Right? What happens in 2 years if somebody loses their job and they are not paying their share? Right? It sometimes, depending on the facts, then prohibits the person who is not living in the house from being able to get a loan and purchase their own house. Man, you put me on the spot here.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years in any legal situation, from divorce, from injury to business. You have your hopes, you have your dreams. Hopefully this will work. Hopefully mom and dad don't get into a fight a year after the divorce and someone wants to do something else.
Yeah.
Hopefully someone doesn't want to move to Florida, whatever the case might be.
It's always when people start dating again. That's when the fights come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you're trying to start to make a life with someone else, and it's really hard.
It's very hard
to continue on that life you had made with someone else when you're trying to start a life with person number X or Y. But, this issue with the house, people have brought it up to me from time to time, just asking the question, like, what's the problem with that? And then you hit the nail on the head. You might think you make enough money to support yourself even after paying child support, alimony, and helping with this house. But the bank might think your debt's too high, and your debt to income ratio is going to be way off when your name's still on that mortgage.
Yep.
So you might not qualify for the house you want. You might not qualify for the house your new wife wants.
Yeah.
All those different types of things that blows it up, right?
One of the things that I have found really interesting that I feel like is new, certainly that I've heard about, is that sometimes people will have the children stay in place and the parents take turns
Oh, nesting.
nesting.
Yeah.
What do you think about nesting?
Again, sounds so dreamy, but I don't know that I've actually ever seen it be as successful as we think that it will be. I actually recently had a case. These people, both wonderful people, wonderful parents. If it was going to work for anyone, it was going to work for them. Ultimately, it was a roadblock to moving on with their lives, right? So what they were doing essentially is they were creating a situation where nobody had their own space. The kids did, and I appreciate that. But I think that having parents who are sort of uncomfortable in their living space, that can't be better for the kids, right? So I'm sort of a hater about nesting arrangements.
The logistics of that to me feels really tough.
I think it can be a good temporary option, but a lot of times people want it to be a permanent option, and I've just never seen it work.
I think people underestimate the amount of de-stressing or like personal time in your own space, what that does to you from a mental aspect. I mean, we all lead these very stressful lives. We have jobs, we're taking care of our kids, we might have parents that need our help, we might have a family member that needs our help, whatever the case might be. And every night you kind of need someplace to go back to that's your own. Right? And so I think that nesting concept, like you said, it's not your place anymore. It's still both people's places. You're not free to do whatever you want, right? If you leave the toilet seat up, your ex-wife might not be quite as happy as when she was your wife, right? Those different types of things.
You know what? It's funny that you bring that up because I have found with the nesting arrangements that most of the resentments are for like really small things that we would never have anticipated. And in one recently, it was that there was a frustration that he was not changing the sheets when it was her turn to come in. And that she would do it for him, right? And I get it, it's small, but it was like creating all of these resentments. It probably hurt their co-parenting relationship that we went into this nesting arrangement saying like, this is amazing, we're awesome partners. And they still are, they're still totally fine. But I think that probably we expected it to be more seamless than it ended up being.
To be fair about the sheet changing situation, I think in 21 years, I might have changed our sheets twice.
So never nest with Josh.
No, well, to be fair, I think women change sheets more often than men do, right? And so we just don't think about it. But again, it's a difference between having your wife give you that grace versus having your ex-wife give you that grace, right?
Exactly.
So when can you walk our people through the difference between what a contested divorce looks like and maybe one that's more amicable?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people think that a contested divorce is like we're in court every single day, right? Very hostile. Police are getting called, and that happens. But really what a contested divorce probably is more of is it is a extended process generally where we are having to look into the details of somebody's finances, right? We're having to issue more subpoenas. We're having to take depositions. We don't do that on every case, right? Some cases, which what I would consider an amicable case, you're not necessarily taking depositions. You're not necessarily issuing discovery, right? And so I would consider a contested case, I suppose, a case where it just requires more discovery and court intervention to finally resolve, right? But even in a contested case, it can result in an agreement. It doesn't always result in litigation.
So just for our people, when she talks about the idea of discovery is something that happens in litigation. And it's like sending subpoenas out for documents. It's written questions to the other side, asking them to identify certain things, like maybe their assets or their work history, or whatever the case might be. But on a contested divorce side, What are some of the most typical reasons you would have a contested divorce? I think you identified one, and that might be one of the spouses or the family owns a business, and now we have to value the business, right? But what are some
Yeah,
of the other
absolutely.
ones?
I think ultimately most stem from um, total lack of trust, right? Most of the time when somebody says that they want a divorce, I have found that suddenly everyone is sort of like paranoid that, what is the other person doing, right? And sometimes just that concern and position throws us into probably a more contested process than it has to be. But for a lot of people, they need to see these documents from an official source, from a bank or from an employer to trust that the information is right.
Trust is there's not a hidden bank account somewhere.
Exactly.
Is there a reason you would intentionally prolong the divorce process in a specific case?
Well, people accuse us of doing it all the time.
Well, for instance, if I came to you and I'd been married for 9 years, is there a reason you would want me to be married for 10 years?
No, you're probably getting at maintenance and the maintenance term.
Actually, I was talking about like Social Security.
Sure, fair enough. That might be something that we consider. So, what we are considering generally when we are looking at the duration of the marriage, in most cases, it's going to be because of maintenance. The longer that you are married, the longer that duration of maintenance is, right? The clock stops when you file that petition for dissolution.
On the maintenance.
On the maintenance, right. So, sometimes. This is sort of a hard question because, so I don't know how to answer it.
Let's
because
go
like,
a
yeah,
different
we
way.
do.
Let me ask it a different way.
Yes. Yeah.
So I practice injury law. I've done a little
Yeah.
bit of business law, Molly. But once upon a time, a family member asked me to help them through their uncomplicated divorce. And I stupidly said yes.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mhm.
And for all those people out there, you don't know what you don't know. That's the greatest phrase I've ever heard. You don't know what you don't know. And so we had worked with at the time the soon to be ex-husband, and we'd come to an agreement that everyone was happy with, right?
Mhm.
But it turns out that the agreement was going to result in the marriage ending in like 9 months and 9 years and 8 months
Oh,
or something
yeah.
like that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as we're about ready to sign the settlement agreement, someone tells me, but what about Social Security? So explain to our listeners what the magic thing is about Social Security in 10 years.
Yeah. So if you are married for 10 years, you are entitled, and there are some variances with this, but if you are married for 10 years, that when your spouse is collecting on Social Security, you're ultimately going to be entitled to 50% of their Social Security or whatever yours is, whichever is more.
But it doesn't reduces your ex Social
It
Security.
does not reduce theirs.
It increases
Correct.
yours, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And for the record, this is something that we don't address in the divorce. This is the law and it is not subject to negotiation, right? But I think it's our job to inform our clients of it, certainly.
So when you're talking about that agreement that ends the marriage, that's an MSA. Can you tell our people about that?
Yeah, so the marital settlement agreement is going to lay out all of the financial agreements, okay? How ultimately every account is going to be divided. What are we doing with maintenance? What are we doing with child support, kid expenses, how we are dealing with liabilities, that kind of thing. The house, what are we doing with the house? So that's going to be the financial agreement, and all kid-related issues are going to be in that parenting plan.
So again, outside of my one instance with a family member, I haven't really been involved in a divorce matter. I've been involved in some civil proceedings that are tangential to a divorce, a business dispute, a defamation claim, whatever the case might be, right?
Yeah.
But I see some crazy things through that process that people are fighting over. What is the craziest thing that you've seen either your client or their soon-to-be ex fight about in a divorce?
Oh, man. I know the exact answer to this. We had a case where our client moved out of the house and she was ordered to only bring, there was like an itemized list of what she could bring, right? She grabbed all that, but she also grabbed some spices and like dry goods from the pantry. Okay. So when she did that, they filed a what we call rule to show cause, asking to hold her in contempt because she explicitly took spices and boxes of quinoa. And this was a very wealthy person too, right? Like this was not at all about the quinoa and the spices. And we, obviously we sort of joked about it. We talked about bringing spices and quinoa to court to purge her contempt. But actually, like when you look at it, it is so sad that it came to that. Like these were two people who loved each other enough to get married and have kids. And we now are fighting in court over quinoa. This was in the past, but.
What causes that type of animosity?
Oh, good question. I mean, honestly, mental health issues, personality disorders, right? Sometimes it's because you've really been scorned, I suppose, but more so, and obviously I'm not a mental health expert, but I think that probably it is something to do with at least one person's mental health or maybe an undiagnosed personality disorder.
Do you see a lot of divorce situations involve someone who's maybe more controlling, that's taking advantage of someone who may be less dominant, and then that less dominant person finally says, hey, I've had enough, I'm going to do something else, and now that controlling person's trying to reassert control? Is that kind of what you're talking
Happens
about?
all the
Almost like
time.
narcissistic personality disorder?
Exactly. Yeah. I hate to say it. It's so trendy right now, right? But it is what it is. I mean, we can spot it from being in this job, right? And what's good about being able to spot at least those tendencies is that we also know how to deal with them, right? And when somebody is so used to asserting all of the control, and now we are in a process where ultimately a judge has all of the control, they really, really struggle with that. And so that is something that I'm actually really interested in, and I work with clients a lot on what to expect. And there are certain things that I always say, like, I have seen it a million times, and I would guess that you are going to deal with A, B, and C. And then when it happens, it's so much easier for them to cope with it, right? And I'll give you an example of one of those because we see it all the time. When somebody is married to someone with narcissistic tendencies, a lot of times we see that person trying to get in the middle of our attorney-client relationship. Right? They are undermining the advice that we have given. They are sometimes flat out lying about things we have said or represented. And their goal is obviously for their spouse to trust us less because then they can maintain more control.
And in your experience, how are you able to address that?
We work a lot on the relationships that we have with our clients, right? We are available as much as we can be when they need us. And I think that ultimately putting in all of that groundwork with them makes it easier for them to realize that that is a strategy of their spouse, right? And I think that as long as they are trusting us enough that we can overcome those kinds of strategies by, giving them notice that this is likely to happen in advance, because then when it happens, it takes the wind out of that sail.
So you've talked about representing clients who are on the opposite end of the narcissistic personality. Do you take clients that are the narcissistic personality? I mean, do you have those?
Probably.
Do you recognize it, and how do you deal with it?
What's weird is I feel like it is harder for me to recognize probably when it's my client. And I would say that at least off the top of my head, I don't know that there's any particular strategy that we would take if we represented that side of this, right? But I do think, I guess that's sort of the nature of narcissistic tendencies, is that I probably wouldn't see it maybe as easy from that side of it.
Well, and that goes along with something that we talk to our kids about. Our kids would like to be second generation lawyers. We've, following kind of the way that your family has done this. But you don't get to pick the client that comes into your office. You don't get to pick the facts. Your job, our job, is to work with what we're given for the best outcome. And so when someone is coming to you with their questions about, how much are you going to be able to control this case, or how much can you do these things, where do you go with that?
So we can't pick our clients, true, but we are also selective about the cases that we accept for this reason, right? I am not going to jeopardize my professional ethics for somebody. And so if they are asking me to do something that I'm uncomfortable with, I'm going to say no. And I hope that most lawyers would, right? But I think that it is so, I don't know that this really answers your question, but I think it is so important for this relationship to feel good for both sides, for the lawyer and for the client, right? But yeah, we can't pick our clients, and I've always thought this is a little bit weird how in the same day at court, you could be arguing the opposite point. And that's sort of our reality.
Yeah. You talk about, these situations. And one of the situations I always struggle with as an attorney is not when there's an attorney on the other side. It's when the other side is not represented, what we call pro se.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think those are the hardest types of cases to deal with. It doesn't make it any easier. In fact, it makes it harder. The court's going to give them a little bit more leeway. The pro se person's going to do things that shouldn't be done in court. And then how do you just kind of let that process unwind itself? And frankly, even talking to them is challenging because they don't understand the process. They're too emotionally invested in it.
Yep.
I just had an instance the other day where I was trying to talk to a pro se individual, and he starts yelling at me outside of court and gets in my face and then chases me down the stairs, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do you deal with that? Because in the divorce context, I mean, it is expensive, and someone might start with an attorney, they might not end with an attorney. What do you do when you have a pro se case and you're dealing with that other spouse who's pro se?
A lot of judge time. I mean, it is unfortunate, and nobody comes into this process wanting to litigate, right? But I think what is so important for us is recognizing early on whether we are going to be able to settle or whether we need the judge to get involved, right? And to intervene. So we probably do you see pro se litigants on the other side often?
We don't anymore. So like on the injury side,
right,
not very often. Most of the time, whether you're in a car accident or you fall out of business, the insurance company is going to hire an attorney for that defendant.
Sure.
Where I see it more often is in civil disputes, personal disputes. Might be something that stems from a divorce case, might be something that stems from a rental situation, that type of thing. And I see a lot of pro ses on the other side.
Yeah.
But they get so invested in it. It's an emotional reaction every time.
With no reasonable expectations, right? So they're making these arguments that have no legal basis. And you can't convince them of that. They don't trust you. So those are just cases you got to get in front of the judge, and what we try to do is, if we're in that situation where we are representing, obviously, the other spouse, we're telling them that this is just our reality. And actually, we're probably mitigating a lot of cost by just doing it as soon as we can. And, I think that our judges see it a lot, and they're actually not that tolerant of the behavior you were describing, right? A lot of people can represent themselves totally fine, and I've seen it, and I've actually had decent working relationships with the other side who is pro se. But when it is a really hostile person that you are trying to work with, our judges are not tolerant of that.
What's the one thing that you see that people going through divorce do wrong? That you could, if you could just wave your magic wand, you would say no one would ever do this and it would make the process much more smooth.
Probably making decisions in crisis mode, right? So a lot of times people are, let's say their spouse told them that they want a divorce, right? Then they're in my office within a week. They've had no time to really grieve the loss of this relationship. They are in crisis mode, wondering what their life is going to look like. And they are making decisions entirely on emotion, right? And ultimately, we are advising them and we are helping them make these decisions, but it's their life. And it's really, unless it is illegal or unethical, right? It's their decision to make, even if it is against our advice. And I think that probably we would find that a lot of people regret how they handled this process because they handled it while they were in that state of crisis. And so, unfortunately, I think that my answer here is another one that I struggle to say because I think that people are so cautious about what our intentions are, right? I think especially family law attorneys get a really bad they have a bad reputation. But we really, really care about these people, and I'm giving them advice that I really think is likely to help them get the divorce done faster, cheaper, and preserve the family and the relationship, right? And ultimately, it comes down to how much are people willing to listen to our advice, right? And take our advice. And a lot of people are.
So when you're thinking about preserving the family, I think quite often then talking about child custody.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you walk our people through how custody actually works in Illinois?
So in Illinois, we don't have custody anymore. What we are determining is what is the parenting time and how are we making decisions, okay? And obviously, our court is looking at a number of factors to decide what is in the kid's best interest. I would say most often, people are able to work that out themselves. But a lot of times we are also seeing people, especially in a contested case, it is an easy thing to leverage as well, right? And in my opinion, those are the saddest cases when kids come in as a strategy and a pawn. And honestly, a lot of times I think people don't even realize that they're doing it. Or at least I hope they don't.
Well, I think it goes back to no one goes into a marriage wanting a divorce. No one goes into having kids wanting to have to go through this. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of figuring out the best way through it, mm-hmm. and then having that workable situation. And I think that's where one area that Peskind Law does so well is the counseling and the concierge level service and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, people, when they're going through this process, it's not unlike me when I have if I was in a car accident or something, I just lose all rationality and I'm calling you. And it's if I wasn't in a state of crisis, I would 100% know how to deal with that issue. But when you are, you need somebody to say you're doing the right thing, right? And so people are coming to me asking, how do we tell the kids? What do I say to the kids about, dad didn't pick them up for his parenting time? How do we deal with that, right? Most times I'm saying we're referring this to a therapist. I think that a lot of times with kids, it really requires a expert in the mental health arena. But a lot of our work is walking people through that. And I think that that's important too, because it also helps them make good decisions that they're not going to ultimately regret. I had a client actually who was a good friend of mine who wanted to, again, in a state of crisis, just found out in this particular case that her husband was having an affair. And she immediately wanted to tell the kids who were teenagers that that is the reason that they were getting a divorce. And I was like, is that what is in the best interest of the kids? I know that that would feel good right now, that you knew that the kids didn't look at you as the problem, but is that in their best interest? And ultimately what we came to a compromise that she would talk to a therapist and go to them and take their advice on how to deal with it. But this is a good person who was in a scary situation, and that wasn't really her talking, right? That wasn't someone who I knew or how I knew her. So I think just to have the other resources of a mental health expert as you're going through this process is also really, really important.
So you talked about, or Katie talked about, people don't go into a marriage thinking about divorce, but sometimes they do, right? There's something called a prenuptial agreement, right?
Yeah.
When should someone think about a prenuptial agreement? I'm sure not everyone needs one, but who is someone that needs to think about that?
I think everyone who's going into a marriage probably at least needs to consider it, right? Most people think of a prenup as something that only the uber wealthy do, right? We are protecting millions and millions of dollars. But, I will tell you, and actually this is interesting because it's something I just started thinking about recently because I had a case where they went into the marriage with some non-marital property that actually probably would have remained non-marital anyway by virtue of our statute. But they just wanted to protect that, and they wanted to make sure that all of that would remain their asset in the event of a divorce that wouldn't be subject to division. But what they put in there is so simple that we probably don't think about it. They also put in there that they would divide the assets 50-50. And what our statute says is that assets are divided equitably, okay? A lot of times what that means is that we're dividing them 50-50, but that is not what our statute says. And so just by putting that in their prenup, and they are now divorced, but what it did was it eliminated any other arguments, right? It eliminated needless time fighting over how we were dividing that property when ultimately it probably would have ended up at 50-50 anyway, given the circumstances that we were in, right? And so it was such a small clause, but I think it probably ultimately saved us a lot of time, and we were able to resolve that case without ever stepping foot in court.
I think setting the parameters makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And in our world, it comes down to generally insurance policies are setting parameters for value, for terms and conditions and all of that stuff. And you're just creating a plan there.
Yeah.
Setting parameters.
Yeah.
So you would actually advocate for everyone to think about a prenuptial agreement.
To think about it. Yeah.
And maybe consult with someone like you.
Yeah.
And then you can advise
Yep.
them whether it makes sense to move forward with something, or maybe move forward with something as simple as we're going to do a 50-50 split if this ends badly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. So I think we could talk about family law all day. It's
Probably.
a very interesting subject, and I get geeked up about law regardless. But I want to dig into some of your personal life. So you grew up in Batavia, right?
I did.
And you've been in a legal family your entire life.
I have.
Your grandfather was an attorney. Your
Yep.
dad's an attorney. All that
Yep.
good stuff, right? And you currently live in Batavia,
Yes.
and you're a mom.
Yep.
How many kids?
3 kids.
And you have a wonderful husband.
I do.
As with all husbands, he does not deserve you, but he's still a great guy.
Yeah. Correct.
You have a passion outside of the law, though, right? And outside of your family. What is that passion?
talking about animals?
I am, yes. Tell us about it.
I think what I'm known for. You know what's funny is that I actually that reputation followed me to the courthouse, and I have consulted with judges and other lawyers actually quite frequently on dog issues, because I am obsessed with dogs. I don't know. I'm a crazy dog lady. Right? Anyone who knows me professionally too, or who has worked with our firm, they have probably met our dogs in the office too. So I am a firm believer in the importance of therapy animals.
And so I know you recently just lost a dog, right?
We did.
And
yeah.
I think it's interesting for people who are not dog people, because when you lose a dog, you want the next dog almost immediately. And it's not because you don't miss the other dog. It's because you have so much love in your heart for the next animal. And that next animal needs a home too, right?
Yep.
But I think some people get that misconception and they think they need to mourn this animal for years and years and years. Yes, you're always going to mourn the animal. I still think about dogs I had when I was in high school.
Totally.
Or Katie and I's first dog, or whatever the case might be. But, you still want that next attachment, that next, I call them persons. They're people too, right? They're with you. But outside of loving dogs, you do some animal activacy, right?
Yeah. So all through law school, and I guess some of undergrad, I was very involved in the Chicago rescue scene. So I worked with actually a number of dog rescues, specifically pit bull rescues. Fletcher, who just died, he was a Safe Humane Dog, which was an organization in Chicago where the dogs had to pass a test, and then we would go into schools on the south side of Chicago and west side of Chicago and teach the kids about dog safety, but specifically pit bull safety, or I guess pit bull awareness, right? And so what was crazy to me is that a lot of those kids had already been to dog fights, and they didn't perceive pit bulls specifically as animals that had feelings, but they would recognize that other dogs had feelings, just not this particular breed. And so before I had kids and I had a lot more time, Michael and I both, my husband, we spent a lot of time advocating for the breed specifically. And then when I started working, I had Fletcher actually in law school. And when I started working, he became our office dog. And I just saw what he did for our clients. And I just thought it was like so important and so amazing just having him there, what it provided for people. And I know that obviously he was like the love of my life, but I know that it's true because when he died, I had clients from my past reaching out. And so that was really nice and I appreciated that. So when he was, I probably kept him alive for 3 years longer than I should have now in retrospect. But I was like so desperate to recreate that too, not just for me, but for our office, right? And when actually before he died, we adopted a dog that was my parents' foster dog, and they agreed to keep her knowing that at that point he was 15 years old. And we said, we're going to keep him for as long as we think that he is happy. And then when he died, then Nana came to our house. And while an amazing dog, she is not yet our office dog. She's actually going through school, right? She's learning a lot. She is awesome. But the rescue that we got her from, I saw on Facebook that they posted a litter of puppies that needed foster. And so I convinced Michael in a moment of weakness to foster a English Mastiff. Who needs an English Mastiff?
You do.
Yeah. Yes. Now I know that. And anyway, so now he also is a permanent member of our family.
So the fostering went to adoption.
It sure did.
All right.
Yeah. He actually, I still feel sort of bad about this. They got an adopter for him, But then I just like cried for 48 hours and Michael's like, oh my God, fine, we'll keep this dog. So he's at the office and he is doing amazing.
Yeah, we had a similar story. We had to put down our first dog together, and I went to go get one dog, and I called up Josh and I said, I think we need two. Can we have both? And then they play together, and then they, entertain each other, and it's really wonderful. So.
They're so good.
So Katie and I actually had a similar experience right outside of law school. So after we graduated and got our first job, we were downtown also, and we volunteered to walk pit bulls at one of the organizations. And I forget the name of it. It had to move locations though, almost every year or two, because they were afraid of people breaking in and stealing the dogs.
Because they were dog fighting dogs.
Yeah. And so we would walk the dogs for a couple hours a night, 2 or 3 times a week, and it was wonderful. And that kind of got us up to the point to when we then moved out of our condo and bought a townhouse. Then we adopted a dog was it Paws or Chicago Humane Society?
I think it was Chicago Humane.
And of course, we went in looking for a small little white dog, and we left with a black cattle dog mix, right? And that was Ellie, and Ellie was wonderful. And we had her for a couple years. We moved out. Katie got pregnant. We moved out to the suburbs. This dog loved to run, though, and she was older than they said she was when we adopted her, so her hips gave out. And so it was challenging, and she eventually had to be put down. Katie was like 3 months pregnant, 2 months pregnant at that point in time.
Super sick. And I say I had the mommy hormones going. They were just firing like crazy. And so I was like, we have to get another dog. We have to do this. So I went and I looked, and there were 2 brothers. And how do you separate brothers?
You can't.
You can't. No. So
illegal.
Right. And they were little, so it was really only, it was still less than, Ellie, who started out at 35 pounds and ended up at 50 pounds because we love to feed her. But yeah, they're the best addition, to our families.
When Fletcher was really sick, Michael said to me, listen, I know we are going to have another dog, but can we get a smaller dog? Because it just has been hard with him being so old and having to, carry him around. And I said, yeah, like if that's a concession, I'm used to big dogs, right? Like we've always had pit bulls. If that's what's going to make you happy, getting another dog, fine, I will agree. It can be less than Fletcher, who's about 60 pounds. And now we have a dog who will be 180 pounds and one who is already over 100. So
yeah, I'm thinking the Mastiff.
That was a marital compromise that we made that I just got my way.
Well, we've had dogs from 5 pounds to 60 or 70 right now, probably, right? So right now we've got sisters that are golden doodle sisters.
Yeah.
And then we have a problem too, so we can't necessarily go get any dog. I've got bad allergies, and our kids have allergies too, so that makes it a bit challenging. I grew up not with as many dogs. I always grew up with dogs, but my mom at one point in time probably had like 13 or 14 dogs.
Doesn't she have a rescue?
She does not. You would think she does, but she does not.
But she does rescue them. Like people drop them off at her house, and she keeps them.
Oh my gosh!
So and she's got all these cats, and she has a license for indigent like raccoons and possums and things like this. She's had goats, she's had horses. So if anyone doesn't want an animal, they just found my mom and gave it to her. And so then it got to the point where like you're at her house, and because she has the cat doors and the dog doors and all this other stuff, you look around and be like, who's that? Talking about a cat.
Yes.
And she's like, I don't know, they just showed up yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
And she would know the dogs, but then that would happen with dogs too. Like, unfortunately, in the country, she lives in the country, people dump animals.
Yeah.
They just dump them on the side of the road in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And the dogs would be like, oh, there's 20 animals over there. I'm going to go check out what they're doing, right? And
but you also get a reputation. So like people probably know of your mom and that she will just take them. And so that becomes an easy place to dump them, right? And so I got that reputation too. So whenever someone needs to get rid of, they need to surrender their dog for whatever reason, they're messaging me.
Now, you talk about the big dog versus a small dog. I think there's some pros and cons, but I think a misconception people might have, like your husband have, is that as a dog gets older, they don't need more attention when they're smaller. I actually think they need more attention as a small dog. I mean, they literally have to be carried everywhere at that point in time. They can't jump up anymore.
Yeah.
They get freaked out by kids, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, do you think that, Katie?
I think that it also comes down to, what service you're willing to provide to them. And they know that you're going to carry them around if you're going to carry them
Yeah.
around.
I actually had to get a babysitter for Fletcher for the last 2 years of his life every time we left the house. He was not alone for the last 2 years of his the entire 2 years. He was not alone.
Was that a physical thing, or did he get like separation anxiety?
Yeah,
at that
he
point?
would like panic and like pee in the house. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll fix this by just always having someone with you.
We took in my grandmother's poodle when she went to live in assisted living.
Yeah.
And the poodle was older, and she seemed fine when she first came to us. We didn't really notice anything. She got very clingy to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, really clingy with me. And would bark at the kids, would bark at the other dogs. And she would sleep with us, and, she would kind of pee on Katie at night. And
Yeah.
we-
But it was very clearly me.
So we tried like putting diapers on her, and she'd take the diaper off, and we tried this, that, and the other. But we thought she was being territorial. No, she had dementia. She didn't even realize what she was doing at nighttime. So when we figured that out, then it became a point in time. Okay, so now it's a conversation.
I think I remember this actually.
Now it's a conversation. Do we need to let the dog go or what have you? And then, of course, my mom finds out, and she's like, no, send her to me. She can pee on me. And so she went to live for like 6 months before she died with my mom. So it worked out well, and we don't have any more pee on the bed necessarily, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we've been talking a lot about family law. We've been talking a lot about your passion projects, your family. Mollie, what would you do if you weren't a family law attorney?
Oh my gosh. I am a TikTok MD. I think I could diagnose anybody with anything, whether it is in your head or physically. So I would probably be a doctor.
Wonderful.
I've also diagnosed myself with all of those same conditions.
Makes sense.
Yes.
And you've created treatment plans for yourself?
100%. I know the treatment for everything.
Wonderful. Yep. Yeah. So we've come to that point in time where it's time for some rapid fire questions.
Oh, no.
You ready?
Oh, no.
Here we go. Okay. So first one, favorite hidden gem in the Fox Valley?
Okay. Hidden gem. I'm not good with rapid fire.
Okay. How about we just do this?
Hidden
We'll come back to that
Okay,
one.
come back to it. Let
Okay.
me try and think about it.
How about favorite restaurant in the Fox Valley?
Has someone already said turf room?
They have not. No.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That felt like an obvious answer. That's usually like our go-to.
Well, and I think so. We live in Batavia. You live in Batavia.
Yeah.
I think some people kind of forget about the turf
True.
room every now and again.
Yeah.
But along those same lines, what's something in Batavia or North Aurora that you would recommend to someone in St. Charles and Geneva that's not making their way south as much as they should?
All right, let me plug this actually. I don't know if you guys knew this. You have not been in Batavia long enough to probably know the Elms.
Oh, no.
Do you
but
know
we've
it?
driven by.
I know where it is. It's always been
Yes.
closed.
So a friend of mine from high school who I ran into the other day is opening a restaurant in that building. And so what the Elms was for us, I grew up actually around the corner from it, and it was this neighborhood restaurant that kids could ride their bikes to. I probably wasn't 10 years old and we were going to lunch there, just kids, right? And the people who ran it, I think, hated that so much because we were probably so obnoxious. But it was amazing. And he is starting a new restaurant sort of with those same vibes. And I'm really, really excited for that. But we have a lot of restaurants in Batavia that we love right now. One of my good friends owns Bocaditos.
Oh, so good.
So good.
Yes.
I know. Anytime I see her, I'm like, can you please bring food?
And you can order ahead. That was the new thing
Yeah.
I learned because they make everything fresh.
Yep.
And so that one, I'll stop. And there's a massage therapist in that building.
Yeah.
And so you walk in and you smell Bocaditos.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so that's what I've started to do and then bring it back to the office.
It's a
Everyone
great
is
idea.
so happy.
It's so good.
I read somewhere that New Elms restaurant will also have like an ice cream window or something
Yes,
like this. Yeah,
which the Elms did.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
This is awesome.
What's your favorite thing to do on the weekend in the Fox Valley?
Oh, we got a lot of kid activities, but I think that this is cliche, but it's just spending time with the kids while they're young.
And what are the ages at this point?
They are just turned 8, 5, and 3.
So what are the big activities they're doing?
Oh, baseball.
Oh, it's
Baseball is
never-ending.
life. Yep.
And all boys.
Yes.
I don't
all
think we
boys.
mentioned that before.
Yeah, all boys. So we're spending a ton of time with baseball right now. Somehow, and this will come of no surprise to the people who know me, I accidentally signed up to be a coach. I know nothing about baseball, but I'm getting through it. We're almost at the end of this season, and it was so much fun, and it was a really good experience for us to like sort of get more one-on-one time with my oldest. And
I think that's 100% accurate. I grew up playing baseball, and I coached baseball for the 2 boys. But I've also coached Gigi in soccer, and I've never played soccer. But
Yeah.
they needed a coach, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, sign me up, right?
yeah,
And it created a great bonding experience. I mean, she would laugh at me and say, you don't know
Yeah.
what you're talking about. And I didn't, and I still don't know the rules of soccer. But, we could run around and kick a ball. We'll figure that out.
totally.
I played football for a hot second in high school, and I've coached my son with, little league football and all that kind of stuff, which was fabulous. And again, a great opportunity just to bond with him a little bit.
It's so good. Yeah.
But then I found inevitably either the kid gets done with the sport or they need to outgrow you, right? I think a lot of parents who coach don't quite realize that even though you're having fun, maybe your kid needs someone that can instruct them and motivate them more than you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I found as well over the years. Gigi progressed up to someone who actually knew how to play soccer. And then, Grayson's progressing up this year. I'm going to step back from coaching, and he's going to progress up, and he's going to find new coaches that teach him new things and motivate new ways and these different types of things. I think we always get stuck, not just even in coaching, but get stuck in a rut like we're doing the same thing for 3, 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
We need to vary it up, not just for ourselves, but for our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I'm not fighting anybody to do it next year. I loved it, but I think that it's probably my last season for everyone's best interest. Although I'm sure my littles now will make me do it at least once for them too.
All right. Last sort of like rapid fire question. What's the one thing we're missing in the Fox Valley you wish we had?
Has anyone said a deli?
No one has said a deli.
You know what I miss being in the city is we would go to the bagel all the time. And man, I wish that we had something like that here. We sort of do now with Bad Guy Bagels.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
They have done a really good job. I love that place, but I wish we had like a full deli here.
Wonderful. Well, Mollie, thank you so much for being with us. I know our people
Thanks
got
for
a
having me.
ton of good information from you. We learned a little about your dog obsession. Again, if anyone enjoyed this podcast, please like us, subscribe us, forward us to a friend. Mollie, if anyone needs to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Just call me at the office, 630-444-0701.
Wonderful. Mollie, thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mollie.